I wow, that was really underwhelming. Anyways, I want to talk about coding interviews, especially if you're a new grad. Um, so I think a lot of people might have this misconception that they actually measure your ability as an engineer, but that's not true at all. In fact, there's plenty of statistics showing that senior engineers actually do worse at coding interviews than um, brand new engineers, new grad engineers, um, because guess what? They measure like this thing that's related but is not the same. It's your ability to solve coding challenges. That is something that requires practice. Um, and that's something that you can get better at. So the downside is they don't actually measure your ability as an engineer, but the upside is that they do measure your ability to learn, your ability to like try and get better at something. That something is actually related to coding, not high jump or something. So for this reason, I think they're actually an okay signal for interviewing candidates. Like, yes, they might unduly, you know, weight new grads more or people who practice more than an actual engineer. But at the same time, it's saying, hey, this guy is practicing and he's willing to put in the effort to practice. So therefore, it's a good signal for testing whether somebody is actually serious about looking. And so, I think it's actually like an okay, you know, it's an okay form of screening. Um, but they don't make the rules. I don't make the rules, so don't blame me. Um, and actually, in the early days of most companies, they actually do coding samples, but they don't do that uh, when they get to a certain size because it doesn't scale. Like they just can't do coding samples for everyone. So as a result, this is sort of like a compromise of it's quick, it scales, and it also measures how much intent you have in a pretty quick amount of time. All right, so now that we know that coding interviews don't actually measure your ability as an engineer or like measure anything inherent about you, what can we do to improve? Well, number one, you need to practice regularly, and two, you should try and practice within the optimal training window. So what do I mean by like this optimal training window? I got this from athletics training. So basically, uh, you know, if you, let's say you start off lifting just the bar, okay? Like you go and you bench press the bar, okay? You do like 10 reps, okay? That's when you start. You know, probably when you start, that's pretty challenging. But as you progress, that bar becomes really light. So you will actually stop adapting. So as a result, you need to constantly be pushing yourself a little bit more. Now, on the converse, if something's too hard, you're just gonna get frustrated and it's not gonna be very productive. So, for example, let's say you start and you're like, I'm gonna bench 300 pounds. Okay, so you go, unrack the weight just pins you, and you're like, hey, somebody help me, unpins you, and you probably actually hurt yourself a little bit. Like, not only was it not productive, but you actually hurt yourself a little bit. And I think that's kind of what happens. Like a lot of the time, I see people practicing technical interviews, and they either stick to doing two problems that are too easy, or they do problems that are too hard and get frustrated. So you really need to try and always like, you know, find an optimal training window. Basically, find a problem just that's really challenging but is not impossible for your abilities. So, how might you do this? So you can go onto various websites and find a list of practice problems. Okay, and typically what you want to do is you want to train something very specific. So, for example, I think almost all interviews are going to ask you recursion. So, let's say I want to get better at recursion. I would start off with an easy problem, and I would keep doing easy problems, or I would keep doing easy problems until I thought they were too easy. Like I could get them in, 20 minutes instead of 45 minutes. Then I would move on to medium problems. Um, and I would keep doing medium problems until they got pretty easy. So let's say I could do them in 30 minutes instead of 45 minutes. And then I move on to hard problems. I would just keep doing this over and over again on something like recursion. And if I got stuck on a problem and I was like, whoa, this problem is like way too hard. I don't feel like I can really make progress on this in 15 minutes. Like I get nowhere in 15 minutes. Then I should probably step down a little bit and do something easier. So yeah, I'd say practice regularly and practice within, the practice problems that are challenging but are doable for you.